Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Middle East Forum's speaker podcast series, Israel Insider. My name is Anaf Kalam, and I will be moderating today's discussion. We are pleased to have Alex Selsky, Senior Advisor to the Middle East Forum's Israel Victory Project and lecturer at Hadassah Academic College, joining us today to discuss the top events going on in Israel. Mr. Selsky will be giving us a briefing on current Israeli affairs for 15 minutes and then open it up for questions. Should you wish to ask a question, please feel free to use the Q&A box located at the bottom of the screen to type your question. And with that, I will turn the discussion over to Mr. Alex Selsky.
Hi, now thank you very much. Good evening from Jerusalem to all. Thank you very much for connecting. So, we have a very overwhelming week actually, and I will try to, to order what is happening in Israel into major four topics, four themes, and to answer the question that our webinar is asking, with Prime Minister Netanyahu has finally released, so-called release, because he didn't do it formally, but he briefed actually the media on the day after Hamas plan that he presented to the government. And what does it mean? Because he spoke about local actors with management experience that are not identified with countries or agencies supporting terrorism. So our question was, how can it succeed and what does it imply for the war efforts? But let me please get to this a bit later, because we must speak about two issues before. First of all, yesterday Israel had local municipal elections, and I will not go into details with you, but I want to give a very brief summary that is very relevant to everything that happens. These local elections show us two major tendencies in Israeli society, connected and not connected to October 7th. And these two tendencies are that by these elections, we see two major shifts. First shift is to the right, and the second shift is the ongoing increasing of influence, political influence of ultra-Orthodox communities, ultra-Orthodox parties, politics, and definitely the winners of these municipal elections are the Orthodox parties and the far right or right parties, and the losers are the left. Now, this is very connected to all the other things that we speak about. First of all, because at these very days, one of the major political arguments are the law of drafting serving in the army of ultra-Orthodox that try to push a law these days during this war in Gaza that will continue the exempt of majority, not all, but majority of ultra-Orthodox men to serve. And this is a major political split at the moment, and we see definitely through these municipal elections as well that Israeli society becomes more and more religious and more right in terms of geopolitical views, but also in terms of Jewish identity / religious views. And we understand that Israeli society goes to the point where more and more people will be religious and ultra-Orthodox. And if understanding as a result of October 7th, we understand that more budgets, more efforts, more people have to be drafted into the effort of security. If based on that, the ultra Orthodox community will not be part of this challenge economically, serving, working more, Israel will not be able to face this challenge. The second thing that is very important to mention before we speak about Gaza is that the major security challenge these days is Hezbollah and the north. And we see during the last week, last few days, that Hezbollah fires more and more into depth of Israel, and that Israel fires and strikes more and more in depth of Lebanon. Only a few days, some very strategic base of Hezbollah was attacked by Israeli Air Force, and that was actually the first time that it was such an attack within the depth of Lebanon. And every day, more and more, we understand that it seems by very every sign that we go into some kind of more intense military conflict with Hezbollah. And everybody speaks that it's happening somewhere in the near months, year. The army is preparing. The Homefront Command, where I serve in reserve, is preparing. And this is the main security challenge today, not Gaza. Because around Gaza, communities getting back, and we will just speak about Gaza in a moment. But it's important to understand that the challenge of Hezbollah is much more difficult and much more significant, and everybody speaks about that we had this challenge more and more. And now concerning Gaza, when we speak about Gaza these days, so the first thing is really the main thing that on Friday, Netanyahu, or on Sunday, Netanyahu actually kind of released. He didn't do it. He didn't do it formally, because if you go now to the Prime Minister's office website, you don't see a formal announcement about a plan. But he did it, by briefing, and some kind of a written even document was, leaked into the media, all the media, which shows that it was very organized briefing. And that plan says that, as I said, that Israel wants to see in the long term local actors with management experience not identified with countries or agencies supporting terrorism. Well, what does it amplify for the war effort? Two things. First, it shows that we must defeat and dismantle Hamas in Gaza, because if we don't do that, it's not impossible to transfer any control, any management to any other hands. Gaza is a small, very small strip, and it will not be impossible if even a few thousands of militants of Hamas will stay. They will fight, and they will make the life of the new, management, let it be called, impossible. So it means that if Israel really wants this to succeed, it has to dismantle it. And what it means operationally immediately, and this is the second thing, and most immediate, it means that Israel has to go into Rafah. Rafah is the most southern city on the border with Egypt, with Sinai, where at this moment majority of Gazans are they fled there, and they sit there in very, very poor conditions, in humanitarian crisis. And operationally, it's very, very hard to to fight within Rafah, but IDF has to do that, because we know that hostages are there, we know that militants are there, we know that leadership is there, even though some information was released that maybe Sinwar with some a few other leaders escaped Egypt, maybe, but even then, we have to get into Rafah. And the challenge is that we see American administration presses Israel not to do that, not to cause additional humanitarian crisis. Now, some will say, and I think that they will be correct, that much of this pressure on behalf of Biden administration is for local political interest within the United States, and not real pressure on Israel, because everybody understands that Hamas must be defeated and dismantled, and everybody understands that it cannot happen without really entering Rafah. And by the way, I want to remind you that just 2 weeks ago, Egypt was speaking very, very, roughly, and uh, stating that they will not allow Israel, to get closer to the border, and that it even will risk the peace agreement between Israel and Egypt. And then, in one day, we see publications about a plan that was conducted together between Israel and United States and Egypt to organize some kind of a camp for those who will cross the border. I think it shows us that all the statements of Egypt before were just, for the sake of negotiations to get maximum conditions, budget maybe, even simply to get this agreement. So we see that everybody understands that Israel and IDF have to go to Rafah, and we will see some pressure on Israel, because we will see casualties. But again, I think that this pressure mainly will be a kind of political game and play. And the last very important thing also, when we speak about the next steps in Gaza, and while we look to the north, we must remember that in few days there is Ramadan starting. It means that in Judea and Samaria, situation can be warmer, and it means that more will it will rise. Muslims will rise to the Temple Mount, to Al-Aqsa Mosque, and this can intensify the whole situation. And Hamas will definitely try to take advantage of it, and try to to say that. I remind you that, as always, they called this operation, the in defense of Al-Aqsa, okay, because that's how they engage the feelings of the Muslims all over the world. But definitely, we will see that Hamas will try, engage and use the holidays. Now, if in Gaza this management model will succeed, so again, if we really dismantle Hamas, and we must not let PA get in, and Israeli government is very strong on that position, it will succeed if, first of all, Israeli government will be able to stand the pressure of, first of all, Biden administration, which can change in November, that pushes for two-state solution, meaning that PA, Palestinian Authority, has to enter Gaza. So maybe even the fact that now there is less intensified fighting that might take longer, and that will enable Israel to get to November maybe that's what Israeli leadership is hoping, to get to November and then to see the shift, and then we'll just get rid of the pressure of Biden administration. That's maybe how Israel think it will succeed, by not letting PA get into Gaza. But these are many ifs that we'll see if that will be possible.
Of course. Well, thank you, Alex, for that discussion. We have plenty of great questions coming in here. The first one comes from Eric Selkov, who asks, with Ramadan coming and no hostage deal, do you think Israel will go into Rafah during Ramadan? Also, what can Israel do to reduce issues at the Temple Mount during Ramadan?
Very good question. First of all, you see that I didn't even mention the deal because, well, we don't really know what can happen with this deal. The majority, I think, I don't know, I think that majority today in Israel is against the deal, because they understand that only military pressure can bring the hostages, and only military pressure can make any deal that will not lead to defeat. Okay, that will not lead to a long ceasefire and to Hamas, regaining its strength. So if the deal can be done during the Ramadan to escape the the possible, right, explosion of the fighting during Ramadan, maybe I think it's a possible thought. What we can do not to intensify the whole conflict during Ramadan, and not to get more pressure from Temple Mount and Al-Aqsa. Well, these depends who you ask. If you ask the more right, they will tell you, don't let any Muslim, or reduce the amount of Muslims going to Ramadan, show power, and then they will understand that they don't mess with us. Others, as it was many years, including the IDF, and I don't know if the IDF really changed on October 7th on this. Let's see now. That's the first Ramadan since October 7th. Will they say, as they always were saying, no, we want calm, we want let them go up, and not show some power, not get to any conflict. If you ask my opinion, I think that definitely since October 7th, we should show more governance, more power, and not concessions. I said that before October 7th. I definitely say that since October 7th. To what extent and how, these are numbers, but they must understand, and Hamas must understand, that there is no room for pressure. There is no room for pressure. Israel is not pressed. Israel is very, very determined to go until the end, to press for better deal, if for any deal, okay, whatsoever, or just to press and to take the hostages by military force. And the same in Judea and Samaria. We must today show force, because otherwise we'll get another October 7th, or many October 7th.
Indeed, plenty of uncertainty there. Our next question is from Burak Korkmaz, who asks, so by the results of municipal elections, is it appropriate to say October 7th transformed Israel into a more Middle Eastern country? Do you think this trend forms a kind of threat against the democratic character of Israel?
Well, first of all, these trends of more traditional, shifts to more traditional way of life, and to more traditional society. This shift didn't start before 5 months ago. This happening for the last 30 years, by the way, for very, very prosaic and simple reason that average secular family has 3 or 4 kids, and average religious, not ultra-Orthodox, has 5, 6, and average ultra-Orthodox has above it. So, these are the numbers. So you want it or not, this happens. And this transition will only go on. If you ask now, if that will reduce, now, if October 7th put another push for it, yes, definitely. We see polls, we see researchers that say that after October 7th, more people speak about not only national Israeli identity strengthened, but also religious Jewish national identity strengthened. People understand that, the anti-Semites in the world are not against Israel, they are against Jews. As one said, I don't remember who said that very correctly, when Hamas and Nukhba militants, terrorists, killed Jews, innocent Jews in the communities around Gaza, they didn't shout, kill Israelis. They shout, kill Jews. Okay? So definitely this transformation to more Jewish identity was definitely pushed also by October 7th, but it didn't start, and it's trigger, but it's not, okay, it makes it stronger, but it's not the only, definitely not the only reason. Now, this is a very tricky question. If this hurts the democratic nature of Israel, well, the right wing Orthodox Jews will tell you, why do you think that only non religious Jews are Democrats? Why? I mean, that today in Israeli politics, you have 4, right, parties that have primaries. 2 of them are in center left, and 2 of them are in right. And these are Likud and the Zionist Religious Party. Now, you may come and say, Zionist Religious Party, these are the right, religious, non-Democrats. So how come they do have a primaries? So okay, and even, by the way, their partner, I'm not sure if Otzma Yehudit they have. I don't remember now. I'm not sure, but I don't know what to tell. I don't think that Israel being more religiously Jewish or more Jewish or more ultra-Orthodox, saying that there is risk for that what Israel will not become democracy in 30 years. I don't think so. I don't think so. Democracy, that, well, it's a very it's very big, in its political dispute. I don't think that, the biggest primaries still in Israel are in Likud, in the right wing party. So I don't think that the Israelis being more patriots and being more right wing means that, Israel will be, I don't know what, theocracy in 50 years. Again, let's speak in 20 years.
Sure. Thank you for that answer. So we've got 2 questions here. They're kind of in line with each other. They relate to Hezbollah leader Syed Hassan Nasrallah. So Nasrallah has said that he's uncovered Israel's plans to attack Lebanon in some larger way. Are his threats to preemptively attack just bluster? How do you evaluate the evolving risks on the northern border? And actually, you know what? I'll let you answer that one first. It's quite big, so.
Well, Nasrallah says all the time things, that's what he does, to threat. I don't know how to evaluate what he said. It's meaningless. We should see what he does, not what he says. He was sitting in underground shelter for 15 years, hiding from Israel and speaking threats. So, you speak threats and sit underground hiding. So, I don't, I usually look at people what they do, and that's how you judge, and not what people say. So he said, you remember this information minister of Iraq that 10 minutes until they came and took him, he was sitting and shouting on national TV that Iraq is winning. So, now if they have ability, they have ability. They have more than 100,000 rockets, including, precise missiles. They have very trained army. Hezbollah is not Hamas. Hezbollah is much more serious than Hamas. I think one of the major shifts in Israeli military and policy understanding of threats since October 7th is not to look at the motivation, but to look at on the ability. And here I again want to remind that we, Middle East Forum and Israel Victory Project, we released a paper about disarmament of Gaza in the beginning of 2023, and we said, look, guys, you cannot see that there is a terror organization that has a huge ability and to say no, they don't mean to use it. So if they don't mean to use it, so why they have it? Okay. Now there are many theories speaking about the Soviet Union versus America, that nobody really wanted to use it, just to confront to stop that. I don't know. I think that we must look at terror organizations and say, if they have ability, we must dismantle this ability. And that's their motive. Now it's complex statement, but I think after all we have to go after ability, and that's why we have to dismantle now Hamas. By the way, speaking, if we already take credits for Middle East Forum, let's do it until the end. We now work on the plan and policy paper together with the former chairman of the Israeli Security Defense and Foreign Affairs Knesset Committee, Tzvika Hauser, who presents the plan that very much close to what Prime Minister Netanyahu presented, by the way, very close to what Daniel Pipes is speaking about, calling his plan a decent Gaza. That's what he actually means. Also, to not to get PA in and to find the local management, experienced elements. This can be, just municipalities. They can be businesses. This can be families. That can control. So we also write a plan about that and promote it to the public and to decision makers.
Well, very good, and thank you. Yeah, we're getting pretty short on time here. Let's see if we can get a couple more in. Another anonymous attendee asks, why has it taken the IDF so long to get to the verge of starting the military operation in Rafah? Why did they not try to invade Rafah at the same time as they were operating in the rest of Gaza towards the north?
Guys, there are 2 million Gazans in Gaza on a strip of 40 kilometers long and 6 kilometers wide in the most narrow point, and 12 kilometers long in its most. So understand that it's very small. Now, majority of Gazans escaped to Rafah. So think of a very small, talking about American geography, it's like one neighborhood of New York, it's not even borough, it's a neighborhood in borough that has now about more than 1 million extremely overpopulated in very bad conditions with huge humanitarian crisis, and you want army to get there and to fight. So it definitely will be much more casualties than in the north and in the center, and even in Khan Yunis. Open the map. Israel, when fought in the northern Gaza and in the central, they waited until all the people will go down. So all of them in Rafah, or majority are in Rafah. So you want to get now to an extremely overpopulated area with civilians and to operate there, well, where you will not have army. You know, Hamas are not, they don't come out and say, hey, I'm Hamas militant. I have, let's fight fairly. We know stories when people go with little child in a stroller, and then he gets, a automatic rifle and fights in civilian. So how you fight that without too many casualties? And as Israel, we are blamed not to be human, but we do everything not to fight, not to cause casualties of civilians, even though it's impossible to distinguish between the civilians and the terrorists. So in Rafah, this challenge will be much, much, much more complex than in any place in Gaza. And that's where we must move them into Sinai. And only 2 weeks ago, the plan of this evacuation was agreed with Egypt. I hope that it's now prepared well, that people will be transferred and Israel will be able really to fight Hamas without unnecessary civilian casualties.
Well, thank you very much, Alex. With that, we have had a lot of great questions coming in, and I'm sorry I couldn't answer all of them. Well, we have come to the close of our podcast. Alex, thank you again for joining us and offering your update this week.
Thank you.
Of course. And for our viewers and listeners, please be on the lookout for our weekly podcast offerings email coming out over the weekend. And before we sign off here, we want to also let you know about a very exciting opportunity. On May 13th through May 15th, we are hosting a conference in Washington, D.C., celebrating the Middle East Forum's 30th anniversary with policy panels covering Israel victory, confronting threats from Turkey and Iran, countering Islamism, and what actions we can take to bring lasting reforms to higher education. If you would like to register for the conference, you can do so on our website at meforum.org under the Activities tab, or you can send an email to events@meforum.org. That is events, EVENTS, @meforum.org. And with that, I thank you all for joining us, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Thanks.